One was from Zimbabwe and the other from Britain. Newsmen were prevented from asking them the questions they wanted. The aim of the mercenaries, it would seem, was to topple the openly socialist government of the new president, Albert René. President René puts the blame for the attack on the South African government.
Well, first of all, the whole operation was mounted in South Africa. Most of the people came from South Africa, were South Africans themselves, and moreover, as you know now, the South African government has released 39 of the people who were arrested, and this is clearly a clear sign that they're not going to do anything about it.
There are 1,100 men in the Seychelles army, reinforced now by troops from Tanzania. Five men have actually been charged in South Africa, including Colonel Mike Hoare, often called Mad Mike. He's known for his exploits as a mercenary in the Congo. Two of his associates in the Congo are charged as well. All five were released on bail on charges of kidnapping, which was taken to relate to the Air India hijacking. A warrior of a different sort, a British Army sergeant, had his reward for gallantry given to him 39 years late. Frank Adamson from Harrogate won the French Bravery Award, the Croix de Guerre, for helping the Free French in the African desert.
I do commend you not only for that, but for standing in this terrible way today. Many congratulations. Everybody. Well done.
Well, I wonder why our blokes didn't give us one.
You feel a bit upset about that, do you?
Not exactly, no. It's a great honour to receive this, I'll tell you. And it's taken me, why, I feel 53 instead of 73.
The Home Secretary, Mr. William Whitelaw, has announced plans to build 2 new prisons to help serious overcrowding. He's also proposing to introduce a law to allow courts to impose what are partly suspended sentences. BBC cameras have been looking at the serious conditions in Brixton Prison as other prison governors seek more relief. They say there should be a form of amnesty, earlier release, and more remission for good conduct to help matters. They also say that there should be no place in prison for such people as the mentally ill or for drunks. Brixton is Britain's biggest remand prison, with a turnover of 60,000 prisoners a year. Mr. Whitelaw says that as well as building the 2 new prisons, he wants to provide better sanitation at the old ones. Many prison governors would be glad to see an end to the old slopping out routine. This wing at Brixton was recently closed after safety officials found ceilings and walls crumbling and staircases falling to pieces. Clearly, some of the extra money now allocated to the prisons could usefully be spent here. Hundreds of prisoners from Brixton go to court every day, charged with everything from petty theft to murder. A 21-year-old artist has won this year's National Portrait Gallery and Imperial Tobacco Portrait Award. The prize of £5,000 is awarded each year to encourage young painters to take up portraiture. The award-winning painting is the first of a series by winning artist Emma Sargent. After hearing about the prize, she told us how she felt.
I'm very, very pleased. I'm very happy. But I mean, obviously the money is wonderful. But what is so exciting about this competition is that you're hung in the National Portrait Gallery. Then you have commissions on top of that. And it gives you a lot of self-confidence. You suddenly think, well, maybe I am going in the right direction. Maybe I don't have to chase around looking for commissions.
The painting took 6 weeks for Emma to construct and paint. It's considered to be a highly ambitious work for such a young artist. Emma is planning to spend her £5,000 prize money to lease studio space to work in next summer. The government is providing 8% more in grants next year for the arts, but it's too late to save one institution. The Old Vic Theatre near Waterloo in London has gone into liquidation, and its property is being sold off. This week, the costumes from many famous plays produced in past decades came under the auctioneer's hammer. One big attraction was this robe worn by Peter O'Toole in his controversial Macbeth. It went for £240. And this costume for Hamlet, which was worn by Derek Jacobi and comes complete with the skull, was sold for £120. Considering the uniqueness of the sale, the prices seemed quite modest.
Tonight on 2. At 7:15, the world about us explodes some of the myths surrounding the gorilla. At 8:15, In My Fashion investigates street couture. At 8:50, King of the High Seas, a portrait of Italian tenor Luciano Pavarotti. Then at 9:40, another hand of bridge in Grand Slam.
He's a man like any here, and can style like any.
At 10:05, Rebellion afoot in the Borgias. At 11, the film of the week is The Heartbreak Kid. On his honeymoon, Lenny meets the girl of his dreams and realizes he's made a big mistake. And that's a look at programmes tonight, here on 2. Here on 2, it's time for The Money Programme.
Good evening and welcome to the Money Programme. In the Chancellor's long-awaited and much-leaked economic statement, we were told to keep taking the pills, but to wash them down with rather more water than before. I'll be talking to Leon Britton, the man who carried out the public spending review, about where Wednesday's measures take the Tories' strategy and what 1982 has in store.
Photography in 3 dimensions. Is it an enthusiast's dream, or will next year finally see the launch of the first commercial 3D camera? As trading starts on the London Stock Exchange in the 3D company Nimslow, I'll be finding out why born-again Christian Jerry Nims believes he can add an extra dimension to the family snaps. And from the London Stock Exchange to a market where things are done altogether differently, we travel to the Far East to find out why London stockbroker Robert Fell has been called in to clean up the markets of Hong Kong. All that plus Moneymaker on the new national insurance contributions announced this week.
Last Monday,
a stamped addressed envelope. Well, that's all for this week. We hope to see you again next Sunday. Until then, enjoy your week. Good night.
The ubiquitous Rubik Cube pops up in next week's Money Programme. Since this notorious toy was invented, a whole new industry has emerged, designing and marketing Rubik spin-offs and cashing in on the Christmas rush. The Money Programme looks into it all at the same time, 6:30 next Sunday evening. Tonight, In My Fashion explores the secrets of the wardrobes of ordinary people, the whys and wherefores of everyday dressing.
Of course, in the street, I wouldn't wear the bow tie and the frilly shirt. I'd wear, I'd wear a shirt, say that shirt there.
The fashion influences me. When I read the Telegraph fashion page a lot.
I like the firmness of the denim.
It's still very serviceable. I should think it would, it'll certainly be, it'll be on the go, I should think, after I'm gone, that kilt.
I love silk. I love the feel of things. And that's marvellous.
Street Couture in My Fashion tonight at 8:15 here on 2. Peggy gets her big chance with some more holiday camp hijinks in Heidi High, now on BBC1. While BBC2 presents The World About Us, which now gives us an insight into the life of the rarest and shyest of the great apes, the gorilla.
In remote forests, high on volcanic mountain ranges in Central Africa, dwell our close relatives, gorillas. Mountain gorillas these, going about their unhurried existence. Gorillas, whether mountain or the lowland type, are the shyest, the rarest, and the biggest of the apes, about which until quite recently we knew regrettably little. Hiding, romping in the very midst of their food, the forest itself, theirs is a family life. Mothers, babies, young females and maturing males, perhaps as many as 30, living together in a polygamous band, all following the undisputed leadership of an impressive and unmistakable silverback male. It's a new and gentle image that conflicts with our traditional beliefs, the myths that die hard. But who is to put the record straight? How can a future be assured for this peaceful primate with the fearful name? A black devil, they called him, with an unquenchable thirst for blood. A relentless pursuer and destroyer of his enemies, tearing them limb from limb with prodigious strength. And a brute with an insatiable, if unlikely, lust. The cinema took the gorilla to its heart, a box office beast quite implausible, but far more durable than any of the actors it upstaged.
Now I can change a man into a gorilla. A man to a gorilla.
And the mighty Kong out-gorillaed them all. The fiction had got far.
As you may have seen in the news last Friday, since that programme was made, the group studied by Diane Fossey has suffered further attack by poachers. 2 adults have been shot and a young gorilla has been captured. On to happier things now, and you may like to know that the new World About Us calendar is now available at retailers.
Aberdeen was a place to be reckoned with long before the discovery of North Sea oil, and will endure when carbon fuels are as out of date as the water wheel. But there's no denying that oil has brought with it some characters, people who measure up to the granite city of the 1980s in both character and flair. Men like Rick Wharton, the boss of the diving company, which this autumn went to record depths to raise £45 million worth of gold bullion from the wreck of the cruiser HMS Edinburgh. His is the diver's tale, the tale of Aberdeen.
That's tomorrow at 7:30 here on 2. In 10 minutes, we take a close look at the world of fashion in a programme called In My Fashion. That's after the news on 2 with Jan Leeming. The time is 6.5 minutes past 8.
A man who escaped from the Maze prison has been shot and critically wounded in a Dublin bar. In what seems to be a Republican feud, 2 men burst into the pub last night firing a submachine gun and a handgun. One of 2 men they hit was 28-year-old Harry Flynn, who escaped from the Maze in 1976, a prominent supporter of the hunger strikes. Philip Whitfield reports from Dublin.
The shooting took place in the upstairs lounge of the High Tide bar in the centre of the city. 2 armed men wearing balaclava helmets drove through the side streets and ran into the pub, where they opened fire with a machine gun. People outside raised the alarm when they heard screaming from the crowd inside, who until then had been taking part in a sing-song. Mr. Flynn was hit in the neck and another man was shot in the leg. Detectives working on the case today suspect the shooting is part of a Republican feud. Mr. Flynn has campaigned for the leadership of one of Ireland's most militant Republican groups, the Irish Republican Socialist Party. He was a prominent supporter of the Maze prison hunger strike and has been living in Dublin since escaping from prison in Northern Ireland. The police suspect he had alienated one of the Republican terrorist groups. The police found a motorcycle used by the gunmen, and 3 men were held overnight, mainly it's thought for their own protection. 5 people have been questioned by police, it's thought under the Republic's Offences Against the State Act. They can be held without charge for 48 hours. Mr. Flynn is in the intensive care unit in hospital, where he's said to be seriously ill.
A Labour MP has tonight told Mr Michael Foot, use your authority or resign. Under his leadership, he said, the party could not provide an effective opposition or a credible alternative government. Mr John Ryman, MP for Blyth, a moderate, wrote saying the anguish of Labour supporters had persuaded him to tell Mr Foot he must assert the authority of his office or let somebody else try. And Mr Willie Hamilton, the anti-royalist Labour MP, tonight came close to being dropped by his constituency party in central Fife. In a dead heat, votes were evenly split between himself and his left-wing challenger, Mr Henry McLeish. The meeting's been recalled for next Sunday to try to resolve the deadlock. In Spain, a new political crisis has been caused by 100 junior army officers and NCOs who've issued their own ultra-right-wing manifesto on the 3rd anniversary of Spain's democratic constitution. The latest sign of army discontent, it seems to support Colonel Antonio Tejero Molina and other officers involved in last February's attempted coup, and attacks political interference and press criticism of the army. The young officers and NCOs were ordered to barracks, and the chiefs of staff have opened an investigation. President Albert René of the Seychelles says the 5 white mercenaries captured after the attempted coup 10 days ago will be tried by a people's court within the next 3 weeks. The 5 include Aubrey Brooks and Roger England, both holders of Zimbabwean passports, as well as a Briton and 2 South Africans, one of whom, President René says, is a senior security officer. The Israeli cabinet has decided to take firm action against settlers who refuse to leave northern Sinai. The area is to be evacuated when Israel completes its withdrawal next April. But the settlers in Yamit have refused to leave and have barricaded their town with the warning that they're prepared to fight. The government's been negotiating with local farmers and the townspeople on compensation, but lately the settlers' demands have been increased. They've also been reinforced by extremists from Israel, who've been hoping to stop the negotiations with Egypt and to block the evacuation. Now the government say they're ready to use force to restore law and order in the town. The first woman to leave the Church of England to seek ordination has been made a priest in the United States. Elizabeth Canham, a schoolteacher, was ordained at a service in Newark, New Jersey. Our correspondent Martin Bell was among the congregation.
Newark shows Canterbury the way, was how the diocesan newspaper put it in this New Jersey city, and so it seemed. Elizabeth Canham, a 42-year-old Londoner who became a deacon in Southwark 3 years ago, could not, under the present rules, be ordained a priest of the Church of England in England. But by joining the sister church in the United States, she could. So she came to Newark to work and to be ordained there. The service itself was hardly sexist or conservative, but the standard one, with at its heart the examination of the candidate and the laying on of hands.
My brothers and sisters, with great joy, I present to you the newest priest in the Anglican communion.
And the first words of the church's newest priest?
The peace of the Lord be always with you.
The embraces and greetings followed. The English Church has declared it has no objection in principle to the ordination of women as priests, but has not yet changed its rules to let it happen.
I just feel quite overwhelmed with the whole experience. There's a sense of unreality about it. I've waited years for this, and it's just wonderful.
And what do you think it means for the Church?
Well, I can only say what it means for me. I hope it will mean in the Church of England that people will think and that the Church of England will begin to move forward in its acceptance of women's ministry within the priesthood, and soon.
Police are searching for a 13-year-old boy missing for 4 days in the Peak District. Robert Clark was last seen on Wednesday night wearing school uniform. Dogs are being used in the search, and the police who've set up an incident room in Tideswell say they're now seriously worried about his safety. They've been checking door to door and have asked people to search their own land. The Royal Smithfield Show opens in London tomorrow, and thousands of farmers, agricultural businessmen and animals are already converging on the capital. From humble beginnings in 1798, the show has become a major event, and as Kate Adie discovered, even the livestock make an effort.
It's the week when any self-respecting sheep spends simply hours trying to look her best. When it's wise to keep one's wool under natty overalls, and when the French, as usual, are wearing the latest in sheep couture. And if you mention the word mutton, you can cause some unrest. Smithfield this year is presenting a confident face, even in difficult economic times. It's one of the major export marketplaces for farm machinery, much of which looks fearsome and somewhat baffling to the layman. And the prime of the country's livestock is present in good number, washed and titivated, subjected to vacuum cleaner and hairbrush, and worth thousands of pounds, alive or dead. And though the show has enjoyed royal patronage for a long time, this year there are no less than 7 Lady Dis present. Most regal is this elegant heifer, home address Balmoral, bred by Her Majesty the Queen Mother. But what's in a name when your neighbour's called Perfect Prissy of Westdrums? For 5 days, Earl's Court will be the mecca for meat and machinery people, but some will take it all very quietly.
One of London's best-known clocks was put back into position today after an absence of 17 years. It used to stand near Victoria Station, but was removed to make way for a traffic scheme. Julian O'Halloran saw its return.
If you think this clock has a familiar look, you're right. It's Little Ben, a scaled-down version of Big Ben. It was first put here in 1892, more than 30 years after its parliamentary ancestor. Little Ben stood less majestically over a gents' public lavatory. But when it was taken away in 1964, Westminster lost a well-loved local landmark. Little Ben remained rusted and forgotten until a French company offered to pay the £35,000 required to restore it as a goodwill gesture. But will it sound like the real thing? To find that out, you'll have to wait till it's unveiled officially on December the 15th, because this is the sound of the 13.5-ton bell that's Little Ben's big brother.
And finally, a return to top form for one of the world's greatest skiers. Franz Klammer of Austria hadn't won a professional event for 3 years, despite 4 consecutive World Cup downhill titles and an Olympic gold in 1976. Switzerland. Afterwards, Klammer said a mental barrier was broken. He felt reborn. That's the news on 2 from me. Good night.